around our use of force policy has been going on for more than a year, nearly 2 years, working with subject matter experts from across the country, legal experts, but also community members right here in Bakersfield who have reviewed these policies and offered suggestions or recommendations for how we can better structure the policy. Police use of force is a critical topic for all of us, for officers and the community as well. And the policy really is designed to give guidelines to officers who have to make very difficult decisions, often in very dynamic and changing circumstances. But we want a policy that gives them some guidance, some guidelines, some principles to go by, where the decisions that they're making are reasonable, they are professional, they are in line with what we would expect, both from a community perspective and also from a legal one as well. Now, the policy can't be written to include or develop a scenario and a response for every kind of circumstance out there. That's impossible. But it can create expectations that when our officers are engaging in their work in the field, that they are using de-escalation tactics, that they are prioritizing life and the sanctity of life, that the decisions that they're making and the force that they're using is reasonable, it is impartial. All of those kinds of things are written into the use of force policy so that the officers can go out and do what it is that we as the community expect them to do and the way that they expect to do it. It's a very, very difficult job, and they are thrust into very difficult, emotional, and dynamic situations. I'm extremely proud of the Bakersfield Police Department and the officers that go out and serve us every single day and do a very difficult job. And we expect a lot from them. And so what you're going to see tonight is a result of this work around our use of force policy specifically over the last couple of years. The team will go through what kinds of changes that we have made as a result of recommendations, again, from the community, from legal experts, subject matter experts, etc. So I would ask you as we go through the presentation, make notes, questions that you have, because after the presentation we'll break up and we'll have some dialogue and discussion. Very important that we want your input. The policy is not set in stone, it's a living document. Your voice matters in all of this and frames the way that we do our work. And so thank you again for being here, and I look forward to a good discussion tonight.
So now we will have some of our CAP committee members, Tabitha and Kathleen, if you would please come up and introduce yourselves and share a little bit about what the CAP does in your experience. And Dave, if you want to. Thank you, guys.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tabitha Raver. I've been with the CAP since I believe we started in 2022. Is that right? So we started in 2022. I've been a member of the law enforcement and criminal justice community for over 20 years, so I have a lot of experience. And this is the first time I've ever had an opportunity to work in this capacity before. It's been a very collaborative capacity. We've been able to work with the BPD. They bring to us a policy. We communicate recommendations that we think should be made to the policy. They take those recommendations back, they discuss them a lot of times, and then come back to us and bring us what they've decided to accept and what they what may not fit properly with law enforcement. So but it's a really dynamic process, and it's been really interesting. But now we're bringing it to the community, so I'm hoping for community involvement and also review. Thank you.
Kathleen Stiles, and I've also been with CAP since the beginning. But I was already working with BPD before that. I've been part of the community policing team that Walter Williams is here tonight. Started in 2015, and we did lots of bringing complaints to the department, met with them monthly and other community meetings. But coming to the CAP was a little different because it was much more focused on policy, right? Details and words, and how does that fit, and does the policy do good for the community, and does it also meet the judgment? So I will talk a little bit about the struggles of it. I mean, I'm just, people say they appreciate my candor. I don't know if they mean it or, but anyway, because it's true. Whenever you come to something new, I don't think BPD's ever done this before, and I haven't done it before. But I'm pretty good at editing and proofreading. I've done a lot of that in my life, and I've talked to people from all over the world. English is a second language, so moving between things is good. So I will just talk a little bit about, so as Tabitha said, we went looking at every part of the policy. Some of the CAP members who were more into details, we met once a week for several months, going line by line, right? Anita, she knows. We line by line, coming up with things. But the struggle was, how do we get back and forth between BPD and us? It takes months. And there was no simple answer. This is not a business. And we have volunteers, lots of schedules. But eventually, with S3, they were hired to develop a process to do the written part back and forth, which was really great. However, people like me were still frustrated because we didn't feel there was enough discussion. There wasn't enough dialogue. But the CAP meetings have now been changed, so we have a lot more time to talk, present community issues, fight with each other a little, and try to come to some kind of agreement. Because it really was a community. The goal was the community, but it was very hard to get that. And I'll say one more thing about that. I've been worked for the University of California, and all top-down organizations that also have an inside culture, very hard for them to have a process to deal with outside people bringing things to them and then discussing it. It's just foreign, right? So I feel like we've had to develop that along the way. And tonight we're here not because our input isn't enough, right? There's a lot of other community members who haven't got a voice yet. So we really do want to encourage all of you. You can ask us questions if you want, but also the policy is going to be available for 2 weeks for you to put your input. And your voice is really important because we might have missed some things, right? So please put your input in.
Hello, good evening everyone. My name is Dave Lal. I belong to the Sikh community. I've been with the, I think the 2 years in community advisory panel. We have a very healthy discussion, but we talk on the policies. Some things we don't agree and we talk to the BPD, and some things we have to adjustment with them. We always, it's like as a friendly discussion. Always sometimes we have a confliction, but still end of the day, we want to make sure it's reasonable for our community and BPD board. Thank you guys.
Thank you for sharing. Next, we'll have Sergeant Bishop come up and start to review the policy itself.
Hey everyone, my name is Sergeant Bishop. I am a sergeant at the Bakersfield Police Department. I work in our training division. So I oversee our defensive tactics team, our range, and a lot of the training that goes into our academy. And I work with some different working groups that we have at the department. And over the past couple of years, I've been pretty intimately involved with the revamping of our use of force policy. So what we're going to go today, and you guys hear me if I walk away from the mic all good? Yeah. I like to face around. So. What we're going to go over today is the use of force policy that we've been working on and revamping at the Bakersfield Police Department. We've worked with DOJ monitors, we've worked with our community advisory panels, and we've worked together to come up with this product that we are now making public to the community to give their input, your input, to see if there's anything that don't like, that you would rather see, any changes that you'd like to see us make. This is a time where we want to get the input from you as a community. So What we'll go over today is just kind of a broad overview of the policy, some of the different sections that were updated and changed, what it looked like before we made these changes, and what it looks like now. We'll talk about why these changes matter and the impact that it's going to have on the department and on the community as it goes forward. Towards the end of the presentation, there will be a couple of videos of use of force incidents that we've had here in the Bakersfield Police Department, and how they are already performing at a level of what we expect in this new policy, and how it may have been different, in years past. So again, on the agenda, we're going to overview the original versus the revised policies that we looked at, some of the key changes and why those matter, the examples of a couple of use of force incidents that have happened in the community, and then we'll break off into small groups where we'll have some of our defensive tactics and Bakersfield police staff that can answer your individualized questions. If you don't want to stand up in front of the group and talk and have your questions out there, we're going to have breakout groups where you can talk about your opinions and the things that you want to see out of the use of force policy. So, in looking at the comparison between our previous, or the policy that we were working off of before, versus the revisions that we made, we broke it down into a couple different sections just to kind of broadly go over. So when we had department values was one of the biggest things and one of the biggest topics that we went over when we were working with the community groups and with the DOJ monitors. So one thing that we had in our previous policy was basically just the department's guiding values of compassion, accountability, and professionalism, as well as the law enforcement code of ethics. But that was pretty much it. So in the revisions, we really emphasized sanctity of human life, bias-free policing, community trust and legitimacy, and reduction of harm, and how they impact the community whenever force gets used. So here's just a quick example. Obviously this is small, I don't expect you to read this, but this is the department values and how it's broken down in the policy. So it's added an entire page of different values and how they're broken down as far as they relate to use of force. When we talk about de-escalation, in the original policy, de-escalation was mentioned under the use of force definitions when you effect an arrest, but it wasn't clearly defined, there wasn't a whole lot of emphasis on it. So now there is an entire section dedicated to de-escalation, a duty to de-escalate, and then another section below it that goes over a whole bunch of different de-escalation tactics and techniques that officers are expected to use whenever they encounter people who are providing resistance in order to de-escalate and reduce the intensity of situations, in hopes that we don't have to use force. But if we do, that we use the minimal amount of force that's necessary to affect whatever we're trying to do. Proportionality is a big word that we talked about a lot with the community panel. This is an important section that really wasn't talked about in our previous policies. There was a mention of proportional force being used to the seriousness of an offense, but there wasn't really anything specifically defined. So there is a whole section on proportionality, defining what that is, how it relates to using force in the field. When it came to the community, there was some, but it was minimal community language that was in the original policy. So now there is an emphasis on a lot more community input, community advisement. So focusing an emphasis on individual rights, the dignity, community trust, and even an entire section that's devoted to vulnerable populations and how to interact with vulnerable populations to avoid having to use force, or if force does become necessary, how to interact with populations that may be more vulnerable. When it comes to prohibitions, in the original policy, there was a couple specific prohibitions, like on the prohibiting of the use of a carotid hold or any chokes. That was outlawed by in the state of California, so every law enforcement agency in California had to prohibit those. But in the current, or in the new policy that was revised, there's a lot more specific and clear prohibitions, so it's more clear for officers what exactly is prohibited. Uses of excessive force, any intentional strikes to the head with impact weapons, shooting from vehicles, reporting or intervening in excessive force, all things that were added as far as prohibitions go. Again, whole section that I don't expect you to read right now, but it's available in the policy and what it looks like. So overall, our original policy was basically just like a general lexipol framework that a lot of agencies in California use as kind of a catch-all and overall guideline. The new policy is much more clear, it's much more customized to the city of Bakersfield. It has the input and the opinions of a lot of our community members, a lot of the subject matter experts in the department that work specifically with our community. So it's a lot more customized to the Bakersfield Police Department and the city of Bakersfield. So some of the key changes that you'll see, there are new levels of force that were added. So there's a level 1, 2, 3, and 4. So minimal force, controlling force, intermediate force, and then level 4 of deadly force. This is something that was required of us to make the change. And the stipulated judgment was to classify different levels of force, and so we actually expanded on what was required to add even more levels. The clear descriptions of what the resistance levels are of what the officers are getting faced with, from the community members or the suspects that they're having to use force on, defining the resistance levels that they are experiencing. It mandates some of those de-escalation efforts that we talked about before, the emphasis on proportionality. There's an affirmative duty to intervene for officers that are present or observing anything that would be deemed as excessive force. There's a duty for officers to intervene whenever that's taking place. And there's an expanding requirement on use of force reporting and what gets reported to supervisors. So in our force levels, like I said, there's 4 levels of force. Minimal force is just, it's a minimal force that doesn't result in any complaint of pain or injury. Some of this is for statistic collecting. So the intentional pointing of a firearm at a person previously was never reported in any use of force policy. Now that is something that is collected and is reported as a level 1 use of force. Arcing of a taser conducted energy weapon, that's now going to be reported as a level 1 minimal use of force. Some of our auxiliary restraints. So whenever officers are dealing with combative arrestees after they've been placed in handcuffs and they need additional restraints, there's some devices like a hollow restraint, which basically like secures the person's ankles, a wrap safety restraint, which is almost just like another type of device that holds the legs and upper body, so the person's sitting in an upright position where they can breathe and be safe, but they can't offer any resistance. So these are things that we're making sure get collected statistically in level 1 use of force. Level 2, controlling force. These are things like takedowns, body weight control holds. These are the majority of use of force types that get used in the field by officers. This is anytime that they get met with resistance, this is usually the foundation or the go-to that officers will respond with, is controlling force, unless things escalate and there's more danger posed to the officers. So that's where we move up into level 3, intermediate or injuring force. These are any force types that are likely to cause physical harm or injury. So this is things like a taser, OC or pepper spray, the use of a baton, kinetic energy weapons like a 40mm launcher that shoots a spongy, soft round from a distance. These are things that have to be reported as an intermediate or injuring force. And then finally, there's level 4, which is deadly force. Any force that creates a substantial risk of death or serious bodily injury. This is primarily the use of firearms. So, like I said, with the levels of resistance, it's classified on what type of resistance officers are met with. So there's passive noncompliance, where the subject doesn't respond to any verbal commands, but offers no physical resistance. This is usually met with a less forceful response. There's active resistance, that's like the tensing, the running away, the verbal indication that they're going to resist. These are all classified as active resistance. Assaultive resistance is any type of aggressive or threatening behavior that can pose a threat to the officer or the public. And then life-threatening is any action that will likely result in serious bodily injury or death to the officer or another person. So these are the classifications of different types of resistance officers may be met with. So whenever we look at when they could apply to each other, so you have all the force levels, minimal, controlling, intermediate, deadly on the left, and then the threat levels or the resistance levels on the right. So if there is any of these types of resistance levels, they may be met with minimal force. When it moves up to controlling force, same thing. If you are met with the passive noncompliance, active resistance, assaultive, or sometimes even deadly force, the appropriate response may be controlling force. A lot of these circumstances are situational dependent and are evaluated on a case-by-case basis on what's objectively reasonable under the totality of the circumstances. Intermediate force is getting more restrictive. As you can see, intermediate force can't be used or shouldn't be used for someone that's compliant, passive, non-compliant, or that just offers active resistance. In order for officers to use intermediate force, there has to be some type of assaultive behavior or some type of a deadly threat. And then it gets even more restrictive whenever it gets to deadly force, that they have to be met with some type of threat of death or serious bodily injury to the officer or someone else in order to use deadly force in the field. So you might be asking yourself and going over all these things and say, okay, that's great, but why do these changes matter? Well, part of why they matter is because it makes it to where our policies and our department aligns with what the California Department of Justice has placed under a stipulated judgment that we as a Bakersfield Police Department must comply with. So these changes make it to where we are now in compliance with the Department of Justice stipulated judgment. It is going to help build trust and legitimacy. Having a more transparent, more community-involved policy is going to make it to where there is more trust and legitimacy between the department and the community. Because this isn't something that we just made up or that the state made us do. This is something that we collaborated with the community to try and put forth the best policy that we were able to come up with, so that in turn it trickles out to the best trained officers that we can put in the field and the best served community that we can provide to you as the citizens. It helps to provide clear guidelines to officers. One thing about policy is there is a certain level of vagueness to some areas, but with this new policy, there are some spots that have a lot more restrictive guidelines and a lot more clear guidelines for officers. So it should be a lot more clear for officers of what they can and cannot do and when those situations would apply when they do use force. It will reduce unnecessary harm to both citizens and officers. With the rollout of this new policy and the training that follows it, officers will be better trained. They will be more proficient in the times that they do have to use force. We have a great training cadre at the back of the room here that you guys will be speaking with later tonight, and they provide some of the best training that I've seen in the state of California and beyond. We do some traveling and go to other events and whatnot. I'm confident to tell you that the training that Bakersfield police officers receive is some of the best training that we see in the state of California. It's top notch. We take a lot of the best techniques and the things that we learn that keep officers safe and that keep the public safe, and we roll those out to officers through our police academies, through our advanced officer trainings that they get on a continuous basis, and we're constantly trying to improve these practices to put out the best training product that we can to the officers. Because we know that the officers deserve it. We love our officers and we love our community, so we want to make sure that the community gets the best officers that we can put on the street. And again, it's going to improve our training and accountability. If we recognize that there's an issue or a problem with something that we see an officer performing in the field or the way that they're performing in training, we're going to make sure that we have accountability for that. We have systems in place where we can identify a problem or a training deficiency and address it in a very real time, to where it gets addressed and corrected and the officer gets coached up on what the best techniques are, and then allowed to go out and perform their duties in the field with the best knowledge and training that we have to offer. So now we'll move into a couple of real life examples. There's 2 videos of use of force incidents that have occurred here in the city of Bakersfield over the last year or so. So in this example, this first one, officers responded to a call of a suspicious person in a backyard that was stating that he had a firearm. As the officers arrived on scene, they responded with less lethal and with lethal coverage. They used time, verbal warnings, and distance and cover to try and de-escalate the situation with the suspect. And ultimately, they used less lethal force, a taser, during that window of opportunity where they had it was reasonable for them to use that force, and it likely prevented the use of deadly force. So we'll watch this video and take notes, and this is some stuff that you can take back to your groups and speak with officers and get your feedback and your context of what you think of these, the application of the policy to this incident.
Hey, does he live back there? No, but does that guy live there? Does he? Anybody atrás? No. Okay, somehow. Hands up. Watch out, hey, watch out.
So again, and you can see where it kind of broke down some of the threats that the officers were perceiving. You know, at one point he presents something at the officers like he's holding a firearm. He's reaching into his waistband, and ultimately the officers use intermediate force or a taser in this situation. Now, at some point in time, officers may have chosen to use deadly force because, as you saw in the initial call, the call was that this person said that they had a firearm in an unknown person's backyard. And there's a lot of unknown factors, and he's clearly actively resisting and acting a little crazy. So it may have been something that resulted in deadly force in the past. So the way that we've been pushing out the new de-escalation and the new force minimization stuff with these new policies, and again, the new policies are not live yet. There's still time for you and the community to provide input for it. But that doesn't mean that we haven't already started to address some of these things in our training. So whenever we are providing training through the academy, the mini academy after officers graduate, and ongoing training throughout the year. I mean, we have every 2 years, officers have to come through a cycle of training. We address these things during those times. During briefing trainings with shifts on a monthly basis, we hit a lot of these highlights. And so a lot of the messaging from this new policy is already being pushed out ahead of the policy going live. And we're already seeing the effects of it, because this very well could have resulted in a deadly force or an officer-involved shooting, but fortunately, it only resulted in intermediate force because of the officer's ability to de-escalate and use minimal force. In this next example, officers responded to a call to assist the mental health workers or the mental health evaluation team with a subject that was vandalizing, with a subject vandalizing and attempting to assault people with a stick. Officers utilized crisis intervention techniques and attempted to communicate a plan. They designated roles beforehand and provided warnings to de-escalate the situation. Officers seized an opportunity to use controlling force to control the suspect when intermediate or deadly force may have been reasonable.
Hey, come here. Drop those right now, okay? Drop those. Hey, drop that. Just drop that, okay? Hey, drop that. Drop these, okay? Drop them. After this time, you got that one, okay? Hey, you just got the cuts. Just got the cuts. You don't got that? I'll get this cut.
So again, this is another one of those situations where some of the training that we're giving officers, we're already seeing the results of it in the field. Now you have someone that the mental health evaluation team is already calling us for help with, and this person is armed with 2 poles or 2 pipes and attempting to assault victims and vandalize things. So he's armed with weapons, he's showing those assaultive behaviors. This could have resulted in a higher level of force, use of a baton, 40mm impact weapons, tasers, but the responding officer that you watched the body camera for, he saw that window of opportunity where he was able to use lower levels of force and just going hands-on, grabbing the person, taking him to the ground, and using just body weight control hold, getting the weapons out of the picture, and being able to use those lower levels of force when higher levels of force would have been reasonable or could have been reasonable. So what we'll do now is we're going to break into small groups. Adia will help divide everyone up, right? And like I said, we have some of the subject matter experts, some of our BPD officers that work with the defensive tactics team and their use of force subject matter experts that are very familiar with the policy that can help to answer some of your individual questions and get some of your feedback. Whether it's related to some of the videos you just saw or just the policy in general, we want to hear what you have to say. And we want you to take that messaging and share it with your neighbors and your friends, because we really do, over these next 2 weeks, want to get some valuable feedback from the community. It's important that you understand that we serve you as the people, and we want to make sure that we get your input and your voice heard in this policy. All right, thank you.
So to make this simple, why don't we just, for example, have you guys turn
And then we also have like 20. Now, in that they'll be attending. So if phase one is like eight or 9 weeks, they have to do phase two. They have to do the
All right, everybody, if we can start finishing up. And if you wouldn't mind staying in your groups, I would like, if we can, to have a officer at each group and maybe community members share a little bit about what you discussed. I'll take a few minutes just so we can kind of compare and contrast what the discussions were. So we'll start here because you're the closest. So what did you guys talk about?
We talked about our de-escalation policy, how we use that, recognizing what a vulnerable population is, what does that definition mean in the community or in their policy, and how do we implement it, the different tools and techniques that officers have. When dealing with somebody in a vulnerable population, the steps and processes that we go through to contain, ensure safety in the de-escalate situation. Talk about internal affairs, possibly the thought of releasing disciplinary action or action in the police department when an officer does behave in violation of policy or even law or acts outside of community expectations.
Anyway, from the community there?
Yeah, anyone from the community or any areas that were maybe enlightening for you guys that you didn't know about use of force?
I see a figure.
The community members, we asked questions that we needed clarification on, and we talked about how we respect that it's a hard job that they do, but we also really like the transparency that we're seeing.
Okay, awesome, thank you. All right, why don't we come over here? Let's talk about.
We talked a lot about what mental health evaluation training our officers go in. We mentioned that our officers go through a 40-hour crisis intervention training, and also the training they do in academy. And also talked a lot about proportionality, mentioning that our officers have to use force, and just explain what proportionality means to our officers. And also talked a lot about force minimalization, which is this fancy way of saying that officers try to use lower levels of force to prevent the need to use higher levels of force.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else with
Chief, you're right.
Just one thing that I wanted to mention that I found interesting is I asked Stephanie, I was like, data girl, what's going on with the statistics? What are we seeing? Because I asked about use of force, and I'm going to butcher the categories here, but she had mentioned that they did see an increase in types of use of force that they had never measured yet. She was mentioning like pushing to give the officer distance from the suspect or person. So that obviously went up, but she said that the higher levels of use of force, like the intermediate, is actually going down. And so in seeing those numbers, I thought that was pretty reassuring and tells a little bit of a story of the progress that they're making.
Thank you. All right, over here. Any volunteers?
I've done enough talking.
Oh, let's hear from that. Yeah, we talked a little bit about the community and police, how we see each other, just like community policing, a lot of good information, especially like school resource officers, the impact that it has on children at that level. Talked about also like the balance. Do officers at the patrol level have access to all of this as well? Have their voice heard? I really appreciate that balance there. Talked about mental health evaluation, those kinds of things, what kind of training we're going through. Anything else on this? Seems about right. Transparency, those kinds of things. Thank you guys.
And over here.
We just, outside of what everybody else talked about, we discussed a little bit about the early intervention system that we have that is help getting our officers the training that needed real time that Sergeant Bishop talked about, and kind of the review process that we go through now with use of force, the different levels of review that we have, and how effective it's been in seeing trends and then helping curb that and get the training in.
Anybody else have any light bulb, aha moments, comments, anything like that you guys wanna? No worries.
Teach out of Cal State, so I'm used to talking all the time. But I just want to make just a note that I'm really impressed with the way the officers are speaking tonight, like everybody. Like I just feel like they're very well spoken. They seem to really understand the material, understand the training. They're doing really well with the community members, especially with some of the difficult questions that we asked over here. And I'm just really impressed. So I just want to say that.
I agree.
You know what your favorite is now?
I think one of the things that I really care about too is the idea of neighborhood policing.
Yes.
Even though now people are transferred a lot, I don't stay as long as they did in the past, that there might be new ways to do it. At least have the same person go to the park every week. Certain officers do certain things. But one of our members, one of the community members shared her own experience of how much it changed her children's lives and everything to have the police, the officers that they knew. And the more of that, I think in our group, that was a big point for me.
When I was hearing one of the community members say how when her children getting used to the police members, it was like encouraging because I would want to see that more too. Like I want that too. So.
One of the things I wanted to share was an aha moment that recently I encountered was there was recently an officer-involved shooting that we were called together to kind of discuss the incident. And one of my focuses is also on officer wellness because as the officers that were present, these are human beings too. And when an officer is involved in a shooting, it's also a trauma that they experience. And that if that's not addressed by the department, that could contribute to ongoing trauma in the future. So I spoke about that recently, and I was told that there's an employee wellness program that is specifically designed to not just, deal with the incident, but also help the officer process it. So I think that's really important because that's something that can affect long-term. Is it mandatory? Oh, I guess I could have given it.
So a portion of that is mandatory. After a critical or traumatic incident, sending the officer to meet with somebody to talk about it and make sure that they're okay to return to duty. How long that officer continues that is up to them, but it is mandatory to go meet with somebody. The employee wellness program is not just isolated to officers involved in critical incidents. It's available to any officer, just from the things that the officers see and I guess the exposure to so much stuff over a long period of time. Any officer can go to that program and seek help and spend time talking to somebody. We have a sergeant that works in that unit, a great guy, and he walks around the building checking on people. It's similar to what Sergeant Bishop said about our defensive tactics training. Is that wellness program is the best that I've seen, and the commitment that the city and the officers make, or the city and the department make to our officers, and making sure that they're healthy to go continue to do the job.
All right, anybody else? Any other comments? Well, I just want to remind everyone, use the QR codes, and if you have comments or questions, please add them to Condeo. You can put them anywhere. It will go on and respond to you there, and those will also go into further revisions of the use of force policy over the next 2 weeks. So I'm gonna hand it off to Josh. He's got some more updates for you.
One last thing, I'm gonna edit this PowerPoint at the end, and I'm gonna put my email address up there. because I know, I wasn't sure if everybody was gonna have questions prepared, so I kind of came up with some topics to steer the conversation. So I am still curious what your responses to these questions would be. Did any group talk about these, or you already had loaded questions ready to go?
You know, I didn't bring the bullet. I
Okay.
would have definitely shared this.
So I'll post my email address up on the screen at the end of this. So if you wanna like take a snapshot of the screen, and then maybe you can email me your answers. So then that brings us to what's gonna happen with the discussion tonight and what's gonna happen next. So the officers heard what you had to say. Hopefully you talked about things that were important to you. I heard like de-escalation, force minimization, proportionality. So what they're gonna do is go back and see, based on their discussion with you, does the policy sufficiently cover that, or do we need to beef some things up and make it stronger? That's what's gonna happen with tonight. What's gonna happen after this is, you heard Adia talking about Conveo. I'm guessing nobody knows what Conveo is, right? So Conveo is just a document sharing program. So for the next 2 weeks, we're gonna have our policies posted on this program called Conveo. On the back of your handouts, there's a QR code in the bottom right corner. If you scan that with your phone, it'll take you to the Bakersfield Police Department's Conveo page. You can also access it on our website. So on the right, there's a screenshot of our website. That's the home page for the BPD website. On the right, there's 2 blue boxes and 2 yellow boxes. The bottom one says policy comment. If you click on that, so you just Google Bakersfield Police Department, and then click on that box, it's the yellow box that says policy comment, it'll take you to the department's Conveo page, and you'll see all the policies on there. When you go to that page, you just click on the policy you want to read. You can scroll through, read the document, and then if you click anywhere on that, so if you see a section, maybe it's proportionality, and you think, you know what, I think they could expand on this and add some things. If you click on that section of the policy, you can leave a comment. So you can put, you know, I feel strongly that this should be emphasized, and here's a suggestion. Maybe you can add blah, 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 whatever it is. Those will come to us, and then Sergeant Bishop and his team, the people we've been talking with tonight, will go through and they'll review all those, and then they'll go back to their policy and see, can we incorporate this? There's no promise. Sometimes we can't incorporate things, but like Sergeant Bishop said, we want the community's voice in this policy. So they'll go through and see, is there a way that we can include this in the policy? Maybe they make a couple of edits to make it fit in, but those policies will be posted for 2 more weeks. So over the next 2 weeks, please take a look at them.
So where do they go to get Conveo?
Yeah, so Conveo, when you click on that policy comment box, it'll take you to our Conveo page. Or you can do it through the QR code on the paper, or the QR code right there. And either way will take you to the same place. So that is the end of our presentation. I would though, since you've had a couple minutes to think about it, I would like to ask, does anybody have any other aha moments or something that you wanted to share about tonight? Yeah, perfect.
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you to all the folks that are here. Whichever scope you're in, whichever party you're in, whichever department you're in. I work for a paralegal office. I think that it's really great having these conversations and having those suggestions, kind of a suggestion box. And also thank you to the 2 sergeant and police officer. They're very helpful. Really awesome conversation. And I hope that we have more town hall meetings as well. This has been really great. It has not been a waste of my time. So thank you for having us and for your time.
Thank you so much. So we are like 30 minutes early, but we can wrap up as far as like the presentation. I'll put my email address up there, and I'll go back to the screen that had those questions. But our officers will stay as long as you want to talk to them. So if you have other questions, we'll be here till 8 o'clock. I don't know what time they close the building, so I can't promise after 8 o'clock, but we'll be here till 8 o'clock if you want to carry on the conversation. Thank you so much for coming. This is really awesome. I'm happy with the turnout, and I'm happy to hear from our community. Thank you. Oh, sorry, one last thing, a shameless plug. You heard a lot about our community advisory panel tonight, right? You heard from Dave and from Kathleen.